The powers of Dominate grant immediate control of the actions of another person. This can shape how they behave, what they remember, or even what they believe. A vampire might make an innocent passerby forget being fed on. They might even convince a mortal that it was their idea to jump behind the wheel of the blood donation truck and drive off. Greetings, kindred. I am voivodemekhet, and welcome back to our world of darkness. And tonight we're going to be going over some of Mind's Eye Theater's Vampire the Masquerade Laws of the Night, specifically the disciplines. This is a level by level, where we will be going through each individual level of a discipline power that can be found for vampires in World of Darkness games, specifically for live action roleplay, for LARP. Now, these can get a little bit confusing and long-winded. Therefore, I have provided time codes in the description below so that you can fast track to the information you need for each individual discipline. With that, let's go ahead and get started with the general information that you all need for using disciplines using the Laws of the Night system. When a mortal is embraced and becomes a vampire, they have innate supernatural powers called disciplines. When a vampire feeds on human blood, they learn to refine and temper the resonance of the victims to unlock terrifying and devastating powers of the blood. These powers range from supernatural strength, speed, and resiliency to the ability to subjugate the minds or cloud the perception of enemies and others. Disciplines are rated on a scale from 1 to 5 dots. After character creation, a character must purchase additional dots with XP. Each unique discipline has the following general characteristics. Type. Are the discipline powers mental, social, or physical? Masquerade risk. How dangerous to the masquerade is using a majority of this discipline's powers? Blood resonance. What type of blood must be consumed to learn this discipline? Each power within a discipline has a cost, usually a simple or standard action, and or a number of required rouse checks. Each discipline power also has a listed duration. Learning disciplines. Learning a dot from an in-clan discipline requires a downtime action from the vampire, as they find and feed upon a mortal with the correct blood resonance of that discipline. If a vampire seeks to learn a discipline that's not an in-clan, she must drink 1 rouse check's worth of blood from a vampire who possesses that discipline, in or out of clan at any level. She must then spend a downtime action feeding upon a mortal with the correct blood resonance for that discipline. This process must be repeated each time she wishes to learn a dot of an out-of-clan discipline. Learning Oblivion or Blood Sorcery as an out-of-clan discipline is the exception to that rule. In addition to those requirements, the learning vampire must be willingly taught by a vampire who possesses Oblivion or Blood Sorcery as an in-clan discipline. This requires a downtime action to be spent by both the learner and the instructor. Thin blood vampires must possess the vampiric discipline merit prior to learning 1 selected discipline. Selecting powers. Every time a character gains a dot in a discipline, they must choose 1 power from that discipline list. The power chosen must be equal to or less than the new level of dots she possesses in that discipline. Note that choosing a lower level power does not provide a discount on the discipline dot purchase. For example, a Brujah who started the game without any potence wants to learn both Prowess and Soaring Leap from potence. They purchase Soaring Leap with their first dots for 5 XP, and Prowess with their second dots for 10 XP. requiring a total of 15 XP. Amalgams. Amalgam powers are special powers that require proficiency in more than one discipline. They may be selected instead of standard discipline powers when you purchase a new discipline dot. In order to select an amalgam power, you must also possess the listed number of dots in the prerequisite discipline. Amalgam powers count as belonging to both disciplines for all purposes. Also, as a side note, any amalgam can be purchased by any clan. Unless otherwise stated, the only prerequisite for purchasing an amalgam is having the number of dots in the secondary discipline listed and the experience points to purchase it. Using disciplines. The following rules apply to all discipline use, unless otherwise stated. A discipline power can be used on the same target on subsequent turns, even if the first attempt failed. Multiple instances of the same discipline power do not stack. If a power has a duration and is used multiple times on the same target, the duration resets and begins again, instead of having more time added. Any discipline that has an action cost to activate lasts for 1 hour. A character must be able to see a target clearly to use the power on that target. Line of sight can be enhanced by sensory-based powers, such as heightened senses, but may not be enhanced by technological assistance, such as video cameras. To establish line of sight, the target must be observed with the vampire's own senses. Any power can be ended if the user spends a simple action. Discipline mechanics are written from the point of view of a vampire user. However, if legally possessed by another creature type, consider vampire-specific terms to apply to that user. Partially supernatural creatures, such as ghouls, are considered mortal. If a power has a greater effect on mortals, it will also have a greater effect on ghouls. Other rules and limitations specific to a discipline are listed in the characteristics section of each discipline. A number of discipline powers refer to situational modifiers such as relenting, wound penalties, conditions, and line of sight. For more information and explanation for those terms, see Core Rules Systems on page 83 of Laws of the Night. Combat turn duration. Unless otherwise stated, a power that lasts for multiple turns in combat expires on the same initiative count as initiated, regardless of whether the character who initiated the power is still alive or if their initiative has changed. Gaze and focus. Some disciplines require the target to focus their attention on the user of the power. These powers do not require eye contact, but do require having the attention of the individual you wish to control. Individuals may attempt to find ways to avoid making eye contact, but the powers of the blood are not so easily thwarted. Gaze and focus only requires having the attention of the individual you wish to target. Anyone whose attention is on you is a viable target for powers that require gaze and focus. This includes the following individuals: those who are looking into your eyes, those holding an in-person conversation, not over the phone or video chat with you, those who have physically attacked you or used a mental or social power on you, regardless of the success of such attacks. Gaze and focus gained this way lasts for the remainder of the scene or combat scenario. It is possible for a single person to focus on 2 or more individuals. If supernatural powers are used to make you pay attention to 2 characters at the same time, you might glance back and forth between the 2, or move to a place where you can see both simultaneously. You are also capable of holding the gaze and focus of multiple parties. Transformative powers. Any power that significantly alters a character's physical shape is considered a transformative power. Each of these powers explicitly states that it is transformative. Unless otherwise stated, transformative powers have the following characteristics. Transformative powers last until dawn, or until the user sleeps, is subject to the helpless condition, falls unconscious, or falls into torpor. The user may also spend a simple action to end the transformation early. A character may only use and benefit from one transformative power at a time. If a character attempts to use a transformative power while already being affected by another, the first ends immediately, and the second activates. Transformative powers do not prevent you from using non-transformative powers as long as your current form can reasonably fulfill the requirements of a non-transformative power. When you activate a transformative power, clothing and small personal items disappear. These return when you regain your normal form. A character cannot use physical weapons, guns, swords, etc., while transformed. Conditions are not resolved, nor are wounds and injuries mended or altered when a character utilizes a transformative power. A character with one eye has one fewer eyes in all forms. Obscured characters and out-of-body powers. Some powers allow you to separate your consciousness or senses from your physical body, or to hide your physical form. When extending your consciousness or senses beyond the limits of your physical body, you may do so only as far as the boundaries of your game, or 75 miles, whichever is lower. Whenever you are obscured from mundane observation, or separating your consciousness or senses from your body, hold a closed fist against your shoulder. This signifies you, the player, are not physically present as your character. This gesture should not be used as justification for other players to attempt to detect your presence with supernatural powers. Your storyteller should also be alerted to the location of your actual physical form. If you are able to perceive multiple locations at once, use an assisting storyteller to observe and report from one location. You may also rely on other characters in the scene to relay what happened while you chose to concentrate on one location. Use of such powers does not mean that the other players must pause roleplay while you move back and forth between multiple scenes. Mortals. Some powers have differing effects when targeting mortals. Ghouls and thin-blood vampires without the vampiric resiliency merit are considered mortals for the purpose of discipline effects against them. Fully supernatural creatures such as changelings, mage, and werewolves are not considered mortals. I understand that there is a lot of information to take into that, and what I've stated there are the verbatim, word for word, taken from the book, examples of the general rules for utilizing disciplines when playing in a LARP setting. I hope that was helpful for you, but let's go ahead and move on to the discipline in question. Tonight, Kindred, we are talking about Dominate, sheer mind control. This discipline is very common in 5th edition, actually more than any other edition that it has been before. Dominate has been used as a linchpin for a good majority of the amalgams, and a lot of people have either not been very happy with that, or they wish that there was more diversity when it comes to those kinds of disciplines. Personally, I think it makes a lot of sense. It is a vampire discipline. It is the vampire discipline. Mind control is one of the few things that comes to mind when I just think of vampires outside of the world of darkness in pop culture. As far as the usage of Dominate goes, the number of clans that practice it in 5th edition has actually increased as far as older editions go. The Lasombra, Malkavians, Salubri, Tremere, Zemitzi, and Ventrue all practice this discipline. I think, off the top of my head, I do believe that it is the discipline that is the most widely practiced. And I've actually had conversations with people in the past where I've said that a good number of the disciplines outside of Dominate are just a reskinning of Dominate. Presence, for instance, controls the emotions of people, not the thoughts. Obfuscate literally clouds the minds. It's a constant use of forgetful mind on people that are around while you are using it. Animalism could be said to be using Dominate on animals. It's a pretty interesting look at things. The disciplines definitely are all over the place, but Dominate does hold a little bit of a linchpin as far as the way that the disciplines work. Now, before we go over the details of Dominate itself, we do have to go over its characteristics. Now, all Dominate powers have the following limitations. Gaze and focus. Unless otherwise stated, to use any Dominate power on a target, an individual must have their gaze or their attention focused on the Dominate user. There is more information in the book about gaze and focus, and perhaps we'll do a small video later on specifically talking about what that means in 5th edition LARP. Dominate cannot be used to force a target to do something physically self-destructive. Commands akin to walk in front of the bus, jump off the building, or shoot yourself in the foot automatically fail. Commands which direct a character into a dangerous situation break when the character suffers damage for following the compulsion. Characters may not relent to attacks that would put them out of a Dominate command. So where a character could decide to relent to a challenge, they cannot do it simply because they are trying to break a Dominate that's already been there. You do have to follow the Dominate. That's the whole point. You've been conditioned to have to do something outside of your standard behavior. However, Dominate does not provide a supernatural ability to know when something is dangerous. If a character does not know a cliff is ahead and cannot sense it, they will walk until they realize the danger, which may very well be too late. Unless specifically stated, Dominate doesn't impart any special ability to complete extraordinary commands. If a target is ordered to do something that she cannot accomplish, the target will make her best effort or obey the command but not succeed. For example, if you use Compel to give the order to sleep, your target will lay down and try, but very few people can fall asleep in 6 seconds, which is 2 turns. Dominate cannot be used to compel someone to speak the truth or refrain from lying. Truth and lies are too subjective to be isolated by any clever phrase or loophole or command. This is actually something that I personally really like. I like the fact that you cannot use Dominate to interrogate any longer. It does make you have to think about how you are going to do things, how you're going to get information. It doesn't shorten investigations to the point where, why did I even bother writing this plot? If you were to tell somebody who was being dominated by you to tell me the truth, they would simply look at you and go, the truth. Because their brain is trying to give you what you want in the simplest way it can comprehend. Furthermore, if in a more detailed you said, tell me what happened last night, the person would say, what happened last night? Because that's what you are specifically telling them to do. Most Dominate powers may not be used during combat. Whether a Dominate power may be used in combat is defined within the write-up of the specific power. Dominate cannot be used to force a supernatural being to turn off power or prevent them from using powers. And the use of Dominate threatens free will and humanity. Using it on mortals may incur stains, depending on how you plan on using it. What type of discipline is Dominate? This is actually a big change from older editions. It's a social discipline because you are speaking to people. You are trying to control somebody socially. In older editions, Dominate was considered a mental discipline, but it does actually make more sense with this, especially considering the fact that most Dominate pools are going to end up using the charisma or the manipulation social traits instead of using the intelligence, wits, or resolve that comes out of mentals. Masquerade threat is minimal. While it might be hard to explain why somebody did something exactly after another person asked them to, there's no visual cues to the use of Dominate. People's eyes don't light up. There's no crazy electric beams that go from your eyes into the eyes of the other person or anything like that. It is more just telling somebody to do something and doing it. Mesmerizing is not hard to explain away when it comes to using it on mortals, especially if you have the power of Rationalize, which we'll get to later. The blood resonance for Dominate is phlegmatic. It's the blood of leaders and followers alike. This is the type of blood you want to drink if you are attempting to learn Dominate. So let's go ahead and get right into the various powers of mind control that are offered to you in Vampire the Masquerade for Mind's Eye Theater. Level 1, Cloud Memory. You may erase a short period of a mortal's memory simply by ordering them to forget. So, Cloud Memory. This is a very good basic power. I'm very happy that this is a common level 1 power due to the fact that people can use this in feeding instances. It comes in very, very handy. The challenge pool for Cloud Memory is Charisma plus Persuasion versus the Wits plus Resolve of the target. The cost is 1 rouse check. The system states, spend a simple action targeting a character in your line of sight and speak aloud the phrase, forget. You automatically succeed against a mortal. Against supernatural targets, you must succeed in an opposed challenge. If successful, your target's memories for the last 5 minutes and the next 5 minutes after the use of this power become cloudy and incoherent. Unless she is pressured to speak about the missing time, they're not even aware that they've forgotten anything. If they are forced to try, they are still unable to recall details and descriptions, but they do become aware that they are missing time. Cloud Memory does not require gaze and focus, and it may be used during combat. That is actually something very interesting, that we're coming to the first level of example, and it's telling you to not worry about the little things like gaze and focus, and the fact that you can, in fact, use this one in combat. The duration is indefinitely. Once you use it, it works. It stays there, and there are some fun role play things that you can do to try to break it. But for the most part, once those memories are gone, they are gone. Level 1, Compel. Straightforward or hidden in a sentence. A single word with your power behind it can force a target's mind to obey most any simple command. Compel is a lot of fun. It is just a simple, easy command. The challenge pool is Charisma plus Intimidation versus the Intelligence plus Resolve of the target. The cost is free. You don't even have to do any kind of rouse check for this one. It is just your will against theirs. The system states, to compel an individual, expend a standard action and speak a simple order up to 3 words. for your target to immediately fulfill. You may also gesture as part of the order for additional context. If you succeed in an opposed challenge, your target must obey you. The subject will spend their next 2 turns attempting to carry out your order. Your command must be clear and straightforward. Run, fall, yawn, jump, laugh, stop, go, scream, or follow are all good examples. The target of Compel will attempt to take context into account. If you point at a door and compel your victim to leave, they will leave via the door that you indicated, as opposed to using a different door or jumping out the window. Compel may be part of a sentence in order to conceal the power used, such as, "I'm afraid I must ask you to leave this house at once." Leave this house is going to be the compel. If your use of compel is confusing or ambiguous, the subject may respond with less accuracy or perform their task poorly, as they struggle to understand what's been asked of them. Compel cannot rob your target of the ability to defend themselves. The storyteller is the final arbiter of whether or not the compel is being appropriately followed. Compel may be used in combat. The duration is 2 turns. So for 2 turns, the person who you've given a simple command to will have to try to follow whatever order you gave them. Humans are pretty much they're just stuck on this one. Supernaturals, you're going to have a little bit harder of a time to have them fulfill. You're going to have to throw a test. But for the most part, what this is basically doing is giving you a quick, one and done thing to do. The system tells you have 3 words. Leave this house. Sit down now. Now, obviously, you can use fewer words if you can get the point across. But I like the fact that the description also says that you can point or gesture to try to get your point across, to give context. That helps a great deal. Level 2, Dementation. You have learned to tap into madness. Chip away at your target's sanity until they have no will left and suffer a break. So we have come to the very first amalgam on this list, and this is exciting because it is Dementation. Dementation is originally the clan-specific discipline of the Malkavians, and it used to have a whole lineup of powers utilized. It was a set of disciplines. Now, it is a level of dominate, which I like more for a few reasons. One, the further you go and dominate, the more the dominate powers become ways of enhancing powers that you already have. So, myself and other storytellers might disagree, but I believe that Dementation can be augmented by further uses of dominate. The power itself is very subtle, and it fits in with social combat in such a way that a lot of people might not even realize it's being used. It is an amalgam, therefore it takes another discipline to utilize its power, and in this case it's obfuscate. You need the second level of obfuscate to be able to buy into Dementation. To me, if I stop and think about it, the only clan that has obfuscate and dominate together, naturally, are the Malkavians. So this still kind of leans towards what they are capable of doing. The challenge pool is manipulation plus insight versus the intelligence plus composure of your target. I want to talk about that challenge pool for a second. You are manipulating an individual using your insight to see what makes them tick personally, while they are trying to be intelligent enough to notice and keep themselves calm with their composure. It makes a lot of sense, and a lot of the challenge pools in V5 LARP work like that. This power has one rouse check, so this is something that you are going to have to fuel with your vitae. The system for Dementation states, while engaging in a conversation with one or more people, make a rouse check and use your simple action to activate Dementation. For the next 10 minutes, you may spend a standard action and target any character who can reasonably hear your voice. A successful challenge causes the target to lose 1 point of willpower. If a character runs out of willpower and gains the impaired condition from the use of this power, an additional effect occurs. Mortals who become impaired by this power experience a psychotic break depending on the resonance of their blood. For example, a mortal with choleric blood may become enraged and violent. Vampires who become impaired by this power must immediately succumb to a compulsion chosen by the user of Dementation until they resolve the impaired condition. Unlike other dominate powers, Dementation does not require gaze and focus. It may not be used in combat. The duration of this power is 10 minutes. So you make a rouse check, and then you have 10 minutes to utilize this power on those who are around you and can hear your voice. This is a slow burn, but I want to look a little bit more into the lore of Dementation. In older versions of Vampire the Masquerade, the Malkavians came with Auspex, Dominate, and Offuscate. They didn't have the power of Dementations. Dementation was a power specifically set aside for the Malkavian anti-tribute, the Malkavian of the Sword of Cain. This is a Sabbat power that has leaked its way back into the common practice of vampire. Now, why was it a power specifically seen in the Sabbat? Well, if you go back 500 years and you look at the Convention of Thorns, when all of the clans came together and decided who was going to be Camarilla, who was going to be Anarch, who was going to be Sabbat. And yes, I understand there's a lot more detail on that, and I'm happy to cover that even in more in-depth in its own video at some point in time. But some of the clans had to bend themselves a bit to fit into the Ivory Tower. The Tremere historically had to give up the ritual to create gargoyles to join the Camarilla. Now, did they do that? Well, they are a bunch of lying mages. The Malkavians had to give up Dementation, and this is where I appreciate the fact that it is an amalgam now and not its own discipline. I find it much easier that the Malkavians would have given up the practice of a specific level 2 power of Dominate that they themselves cultivated than giving up an entire birthright brought to them through their antediluvian. This just makes a lot more sense to me. But I will stop going on my rant about Dementation and how I like this version better as we move on. Level 2, Mesmerize. You have learned to hypnotize others, bending them to carry out your orders. Even complicated instructions can be given with this level of hypnosis. We are now on Mesmerize. This is very much like Compel, but it is more detailed oriented. Now, some people might say, why even bother taking Compel? It's free. First off, it's a quick, easy, snap of the fingers, you're going to go do this, go do it power. Where this one, it has a cost. So I can see where Mesmerize is definitely good. It's important as a person who plays Clan Tzimisce on occasion in LARP. I tend to utilize Mesmerize, but Compel will help you just get through things quickly. The challenge pool for Mesmerize is manipulation plus persuasion versus intelligence plus resolve of the target. The cost is 1 rouse check. The system states, with Mesmerize, you can issue complex commands to your target. To mesmerize your target, make 1 rouse check. Speak a simple set of instructions aloud, and perform a contested challenge. If successful, the target will immediately attempt to carry out your instructions until the activity is reasonably complete, or for 1 hour, whichever comes first. So here's another benefit to mesmerism. You are performing a rouse check, unlike Compel, but instead of 2 turns, 6 seconds, this gives you an entire hour of hypnosis that you have now a person who is carrying out your order. The mesmerism user may dictate anything from simple directives, hand me your car keys, to complex ones. Take detailed notes at the Brujah clan meeting and bring those notes to me afterwards, are wonderful examples. Mesmerism cannot rob your target of the ability to defend themselves. A character forced to count loudly to 1 million can still dodge, run away, or even attack, so long as they keep counting. However, she probably could not effectively hide or use their obfuscate to vanish while calling out the numbers. Mesmerism cannot string together multiple unrelated actions. You cannot use mesmerism to force another character to perform a list of tasks. Tell me where your ghouls live, and give me the keys to your car, and then go punch that Brujah, and finally, sit in the corner for the rest of the hour. That's a little bit too much. You may imply more than one action in a single command, such as, give me the money in your wallet. In this case, the recipient will unbutton their back pocket, remove their wallet, extract the currency, and hand it over to you. So you do have to be careful how you are using this power when you are using it. Mesmerism cannot be used to prevent a character from using a discipline, although it can be used to prevent a victim from attacking in certain ways. For example, you cannot tell someone not to use conceal, but you can order them to show you all of the weapons on their person. In all cases, your storyteller is the final arbiter of what is and what is not appropriate for mesmerism. This power may not be used during combat, but if initiated prior to the start of combat, its duration continues into the combat. For example, when a mesmerism given outside of combat to murder the prince when he enters the room activates and causes the target to begin attacking the prince, the compulsion continues until the task is completed, or another effect would cause the attacker to stop. Mesmerism commands that carry into combat cannot rob the target the ability to defend themselves. An individual can only have one active mesmerism from a given dominate user. If you attempt to implant a new suggestion into the mind of a victim currently under a previous mesmerism from you, the new application of this power erases your earlier instructions. A victim may have multiple mesmerisms lurking in their psyche at the same time, providing each mesmerism was implanted by a different individual. If 2 mesmerists, I hate that word, but that's what they used, implant conflicting orders in a target, the victim will follow the newer mesmerism first. The victim will perform those tasks until completed, or for an hour. Once that mesmerism has ended, the subject will attempt to fulfill the older mesmerism. Once that mesmerism has ended, the subject will attempt to fulfill the older mesmerism. Note that the older mesmerism's duration begins at the point it was triggered. So, the victim may have only a few minutes of duration left in that situation, if anything at all. If you fail a test to use mesmerism, you may not test again on the same target for 5 minutes. The duration for mesmerism is until the order has been carried out, or 1 hour. Mesmerism is Compel's bigger, badder, meaner brother. I like the fact that you can't just load a person up with triggers, but I do also like the fact that more than one person could end up mesmerizing somebody at the same time. And given the uses of it, it could end up leading to all kinds of just like messed up issues. Especially if the second mesmerism user or the first mesmerism, like if they don't know that there's more than one, it's going to be something where I'm sure a messed up situation is going to come up at some point in time. Level 2, Domitor's favor. When conditioned with this power, your thralls find it more difficult to act against you and defy their blood bond. Domitor's favor is a very, very interesting one. It doesn't really say anything in the LARP explanation, but this power is very, very Tzimisce, and I like it because they are the ones who are very much like, these are my thralls. And this is usable for anybody. I can definitely see a Ventrue using this. I can see Lasombra using this, absolutely. But it feels like it has the old world royalty, regalness of Clan Tzimisce, in my opinion. The cost for this power is 1 rouse check. And the system states, activate this power by making 1 rouse check while in the presence of one of your thralls. The target, thrall, must be able to see you. Once activated, for the next month. Any defiance checks the thrall makes uses their resolve plus intelligence versus the bond strength plus 3. In addition, if a thrall fails 1 or more defiance checks during the duration of this power, their blood bond will not weaken that month. The user of this power cannot in any way circumvent the maximum number of vampire thralls a Domitor may have based on their blood potency. That is a good reason to read up on the blood bond in this book, by the way, because there are specific limitations to how many people you can have as a thrall. The duration of this power lasts 1 month. This is just a very demanding, controlling power, and it could lead to some very interesting dominance play, depending on how the game is being run. This definitely opens up the idea of consent roleplay. If the people that you're controlling with this power are not having fun, then is it really worth having? I would definitely suggest open out-of-character conversation while also having these powers. Level 3, Forgetful Mind. You've learned how to alter someone's memory. With this power, you can pull a memory from someone, add a false memory, or replace a recollection with something more to your liking. The Forgetful Mind is a very fun power, very much in the same way that Mesmerism is a heightened version of Compel. Forgetful Mind is a heightened version of Cloud Memory. The challenge pool here is Manipulation plus Subterfuge versus the Composure plus Resolve of the target. The cost is 1 rouse check per 10 minutes of altered memories. This is one of the very few that the rouse check actually has a stipulation based on time. The system states, to activate Forgetful Mind, expend a standard action, make 1 rouse check, and make an opposed challenge. If you're successful, your target enters a trance for a small amount of time while you offer details to alter, erase, or completely overwrite the target's memory. If the target is threatened in any way, she will snap out of the trance, ending the application of Forgetful Mind. For this reason, it is not possible to use Forgetful Mind in a combat situation. A successful use of Forgetful Mind allows you to erase or alter up to 10 minutes of memory. A more substantial period of time may be altered in 10-minute increments with repeated applications, which require multiple rouse checks for this power. It is a relatively simple matter to rifle through a victim's psyche and erase swaths of memory, but unless you offer something in its place, the deletion will leave a blank spot in the victim's recollection. You can instead create false memories, describing a plausible story for the victim's subconscious to absorb. You may tell the target to incorporate new information into or remove details from their original memory. The target will do so seamlessly, justifying the information within the context of their overall memory. Unless someone else points out major contradictions in that memory, the target will rationalize away any discrepancies. Forgetful Mind does not grant the user any telepathic ability to see an event in the target's mind. The events are remembered from the subject's point of view and are verbally described to the best of the subject's ability. If the subject does not know a detail about the event, then she cannot describe the detail under Forgetful Mind. A character can use Forgetful Mind to detect false or missing memories, and, under the correct circumstances, restore them. When you use Forgetful Mind on a target, you must log your actions with the subject's storyteller. Include your character's Dominate test pool, and the number of Dominate powers possessed at the time you performed Forgetful Mind. Restoring lost or altered memories is impossible. A vampire cannot use Forgetful Mind to alter or erase their own memories. This power may not be used in combat. If you fail a test to use Forgetful Mind, you may not test again on the same target for 5 minutes. The duration is indefinitely. Once you get the altered memory in there or take the memory out, it is gone. There is no getting it back. I enjoy this power. I think that there's a lot of detail in that description, and there really should be, because there's so much that you could do to not perform this properly. Level 3, Submerged Directive. This power lets you reach a more advanced level with your Dominate powers, placing a subliminal command into the target's mind that will activate exactly when you want it to. So here we are at creating sleeper agents. That's exactly what this power is. This is like MK Ultra. The cost of this power is absolutely free. There is no rouse check for it. However, it does have prerequisites. You have to have either Cloud Memory, Compel, or Mesmerize to utilize Submerged Directive. The system states, anytime you utilize the power of Cloud Memory, Compel, or Mesmerism, you may allow your commands to remain dormant until a specific stimulus occurs. This trigger can be almost anything, such as a date, a time, encountering a specific person, or hearing a certain phrase. For example, you might direct a target to drink mortal blood if she hears the word vagrant. If your target hears that word, and there is a source of mortal blood nearby, she will attempt to do so. These dormant effects remain until triggered, and should be logged with the storyteller. You may only have one active submerged directive in effect on a single character at a time. A character may have multiple submerged directives lying dormant from multiple different characters. If the dormant effect is triggered during combat, submerged directive works normally. The duration of this power is until triggered. Once you get that in there, you have an active sleeper agent. This is terrifying, especially if you have an entire coterie of kindred who all practice submerged directive, who use it to double up on a sleeper agent. This is a terrifying aspect of Dominate, and it's probably one of my favorites. Level 4, Rationalize. The subjects of your Dominate now adopt the commands you give them as if they were their own idea. This one is a little messed up, might I say. I like this one, though, a lot, because it takes out a lot of... I don't know, it just... I think I've seen people play off most Dominate powers as if Rationalize was a thing. But this lets me know that it's not. Just the existence of this power leads to a bunch of really fun complications that a storyteller can throw into a game. The cost is free because it literally just enhances Dominate that you already have. The system states your targets do not realize that they've been dominated by you. They will only recall your commands if reminded by someone else, and even then, they will proudly proclaim and believe that their actions are in fact their own. Your victims must rationalize away any strange behavior after only the briefest moments of confusion. If a power that Rationalize would modify is triggered during a combat, such as Mesmerism or Conditioning, Rationalize still works normally. And the duration is indefinitely. They now believe it is their idea. That is a dangerous application of Dominate. Level 4, Conditioning. An adept hypnotist. You may now use repeated sessions to implant suggestions and triggers that would eventually change a person's behavior for a long time. Conditioning is, it's a violation. It is a massive violation. I really don't see anybody getting away with this, using this power without stains. But a lot of that can be said for most Dominate powers, truthfully. Dominate really is just full of violations of moral ethics. The challenge pool for conditioning is manipulation plus persuasion versus the intelligence plus resolve of the victim. The prerequisites for conditioning are submerged directive and either compel or mesmerize. So not only do you have to have submerged directive to take conditioning, you also have to have thought about that when you were going earlier as well, because you have to have either compel or mesmerize. I think that's the first discipline we've come across that actually has two prerequisites, but it does give you an either or when it comes to like the compel or the mesmerism. The cost is 2 rouse checks to use conditioning. The system states, through sustained mental exertion, you can implant a semi-permanent mesmerism as per the above Dominate power deep in your subject's mind. Conditioning a target takes 3 hours of diligent and uninterrupted effort, during which time your subject must be conscious and aware. The target may be restrained, but they cannot be unconscious, drugged, or otherwise unaware. Once your character has spent this time, make an opposed challenge against the subject. If successful, you implant a mesmerism that can be triggered repeatedly. Mesmerisms implanted through conditioning must have a clearly defined trigger. A conditioned character acts normally, with no alterations of their standard behavior, until such time as their conditioning is triggered. Once activated, the target must fulfill the behaviors demanded by the conditioning or attempt to do so for 1 hour, whichever comes first. Just like Compel or Mesmerism, a conditioning compulsion will automatically break if the target realizes that performing the action will lead them to direct harm. When this happens, the current compulsion to act will cease, but the conditioning itself will remain and can be triggered again in the future. For example, you might condition a target to drink mortal blood every time they hear the word vagrant, as I gave as an example before. If your target hears the word and there's a source of mortal blood nearby, they will always attempt to do so. This conditioning may seem foreign, unnecessary, or uncomfortable to fulfill unless the vampire user also has Rationalize. The initial compulsion will end as soon as she finishes drinking, but could start again if someone else says the word. If the conditioned individual is stranded in the middle of the desert with no source of blood available and they hear the words, they will spend an hour looking for a source of mortal blood. Thereafter, the compulsion will fade until the next time they hear the word. A successful compulsion implanted with conditioning is permanent until broken by the subject. It cannot be removed or overridden. A mortal who goes 1 year without having their condition triggered may make a contested challenge. If successful, the target breaks the conditioning. If they fail, the target must wait another year before attempting to break the conditioning for a second time. And another year after that, before they can try a third time. Supernatural creatures may attempt to break conditioning if they avoid having the compulsion triggered for 3 months. If the victim fails the opposed challenge, then they must wait another 3 months before making another attempt, and so on. A character's conditioning cannot be triggered more than once per hour. The compulsion placed by conditioning does not count towards a character's mesmerism limit. A target may be the victim of your mesmerism and conditioning powers at the same time. However, you may implant one conditioning compulsion at a time per person. A subject may have multiple conditioned compulsions, provided each one comes from a different user of Dominate. If the dormant effect is triggered during combat, conditioning works normally, and the duration is until broken. So, there's always so much information when it comes to this kind of stuff, but that's important. I want that to be really understood by everybody in the community, because you are talking about taking away player characters' free will for an amount of time. There does need to be consent out of character while this stuff is happening, but also it's not cool to just go, oh, I don't want that to happen, so I'm not comfortable with it, it can't happen. Like, I get it. I really, really get it if you're uncomfortable with something and all that, but like, it is kind of implied in the game in the way that it's played. So both the person being dominated and the dominator and the storyteller, you all really need to be aware of everybody's comfort zones. Level 5. Mass Manipulation. At this level of mastery, you have learned to command an entire group with a single order. Mass manipulation is it's an exception to a rule that you can only really do this to one individual at a time. The cost of mass manipulation is 1 rouse check in addition to the cost of the power being augmented. So this is not just a free add-on. This is something that you do have to also rouse check if what you're already doing has a rouse check involved in it. The system states, your dominate powers can affect a number of additional targets equal to your dots of the intimidation skill, with a minimum of 2. You must have gaze and focus of your intended targets. Mass manipulation cannot be used with possession. It may be used to augment Compel during combat. The duration of this power is passive. So I want everyone to stop and think about what those simple directions actually meant there. Your dominate power can affect a number of additional targets equal to your dots of the intimidation skill, which means that if you have 5, that means that you can dominate up to 6 people at once, because it's in addition, not total. Also, the idea that this just lets you do that is just mind-blowing. But it is a level 5. You are starting to reach ridiculous amounts of power when you get to the 5th levels of discipline. Level 5. Terminal Decree. Your mastery of Dominate is so overwhelming that you can override base survival instincts and orchestrate your puppet into perilous danger. We're breaking another rule of Dominate here, where you can't have them harm themselves or put themselves into dangerous situations. The cost of Terminal Decree is 1 rouse check, in addition to the cost of the power being augmented. So, depending on what you're using, might also have another rouse check. The prerequisite of Terminal Decree is Compel, Mesmerize, or Conditioning. So basically, Terminal Decree allows you to put the person that you are using Compel, Mesmerize, or Conditioning in direct danger. Even if they can see that it's dangerous, they're still going to do it. The system states, you may now direct targets into dangerous situations with your Dominate powers. Your Dominate commands no longer automatically end when your target takes damage from following them. For example, a character mesmerized to stake and kidnap their gang leader for the Camarilla would continue to try, even if the gang was beating them into torpor. However, you may not order the target to damage themselves. For example, you cannot order them to jump off a building, step into the sun, put their hands in a fire, allow themselves to be struck without defending themselves, walk in front of a bus, stake their own hearts, or similar actions. With these principles in mind, the storyteller is the final arbiter of what uses of Terminal Decree are appropriate. The duration for Terminal Decree is the duration of the power being enhanced. So you cannot say, I want you to harm yourself in this fashion, but you can definitely put them in a dangerous situation and have them not snap out of it right away. That's pretty damn interesting and useful, as messed up as it is. I want the players of this game, both the users of Dominate, the receivers of Dominate, and even the storytellers, to stop and think about stains when it comes to this. Dominate should be riddled with stains. Like, there's a list of things that can pop up that will create stains. If you ghoul a person, you take 1 stain. If you embrace a person, you take 2, because you've technically ended a life. Take that in consideration when you're looking at Dominate, because the actions of the person who you've dominated are not their own, they're yours. You are the one who should take the stains for the things that they do. Now, I think that the people who do the actions probably should take the stains too, primarily due to the fact that they still have to figure out where their mind is while it's all happening. So we have just discussed Dominate in great detail. We went over all the different powers. It's a lot of fun. I'm a huge fan of Dominate. I actually like the fact that in 5th edition it is kind of like spread out to other clans that didn't quite have it before. The only clan that I can think of that did have it that doesn't any longer are the Giovanni, but the Giovanni aren't really the Giovanni any longer either. They are the Hecata, and there's a whole reason, both in character and out of character, on why those disciplines were swapped when they were. But until we cover all that stuff later on, I love the way that Dominate works. I like the fact that the Tzimisce have it. I do greatly miss Auspex being an in-clan discipline for the Tzimisce. I always felt that it really kind of it fit in with like the shamanistic practices of the Khaldun, but that doesn't mean you can't have it. With the way that this game is, you get to take 2 in-clan disciplines and then whatever you want after that. So there's nothing stopping somebody who would rather have like Auspex instead of Animalism or something like that. But it does make you have to think about the way things work, and we are going to see plenty more amalgams featuring Dominate as we go through this list. So we've just covered a discipline in level by level, and this is everything that is found in Laws of the Night. So as other books come out, those disciplines will be found in the other playlists for those other books. But I do want to remind you that the reason why we are doing this is a quick check reference. If you need to find something or have somebody else basically speaking to help you grasp what they're talking about with these powers, because it can be a lot of information. Keep in mind that there are time codes in the description of this video so that you can get to the specific information that you need for the individual discipline. I am voivodemekhet. This is Our World of Darkness, and thank you for joining me into this deep dive, level by level look in a Mind's Eye Theater Vampire the Masquerade Laws of the Night discipline. Good evening.